Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. Let's discuss this motherfucker from FedEx. He's gonna block my fucking exit. Alright, I guess that, it's not quite as blocked as I thought it was going to be. Anyway, we are going to talk about a few topics today. First off, let's talk about GTA 6, which was confirmed today by Rockstar Games as in development. Also, the confirmation that GTA 5 for next-gen consoles will be coming out in March 15th to be exact. I guess the release date's big news, but I don't understand why people are surprised. See, and here's the problem with the quote-unquote insider that I keep railing against, because it's like, when you talk about an insider, it almost never is accurate, and this kind of points that out, because it's like, look, there have been equally rumors about everything else that they do, whether it's GTA 6, whether it's Bully 2, this is not new. This is not something that is new to people who follow Rockstar. It's, every Rockstar franchise that's ever come out has been the target of some insider saying the sequel is in development. So, Bully 2 is going to happen eventually because they want to get back into that well, and it's not exactly an insight to say that they're working on it. So the fact that Bully 2 wasn't announced pissed people off because they're like, hey, I thought I heard that Bully 2 was in development. It's like, well, no, not really. It's like, it's some insider, quote-unquote, said that Bully 2 is in development, and someone else said that GTA 6 is in development. Odds are someone's going to be right. It's just like how there's a leaked map of what the world of GTA 6 is going to look like. It's like, oh, well, it's going to be Vice City, which is, broadly Miami. Is it going to be San Andreas? Probably not, because they just did San Andreas, which is, broadly Los Angeles. Is it going to be Liberty City, which is broadly New York? That could be interesting. I would like that. If it's like GTA 6 with, the quality of GTA 5, but set in a fictional New York, I would dig that, Granted, I'm also from New York, so, maybe that's just, my bias towards my, where I'm from showing. But, that's neither here nor there. So I think that, you shouldn't be surprised to anyone. I am a little surprised they waited until this close to announce the release date of, and I think it has something to do with making sure they have the supply to send out the games for GTA Next Gen. They want to make sure they have enough supply to properly, ship according to demand for those. So maybe that's why they waited until this close to release to actually, formally announce it. But I don't know. That just felt a little off. But it is a remaster, not a whole new game. If it was a whole new game, they would give it the 2-year lead time of this is when it's coming. Bask in its, impendingness. And it's they would have given it a little more lead time. But, it's a remaster, so it is coming. So that's it for that story. The next story is the leaked Kenobi release date from a Disney Plus insider. Now, this is not an insider. That's a wrong word. It is, I guess if we use the word insider in its most literal form, then yes, it's an insider because it is someone who works on the inside at Disney. So he does have some insight into it. He works, he's the vice president of global marketing at Disney Plus or something like that. And he tweeted that Kenobi will be coming to Disney Plus in May of this year. Okay. I could see that happening. I would have thought that Andor would have come first. But alright, I could see that happening. That makes sense. And then next year, see, the way that I think this is going to end up working is we're going to get, Book of Boba Fett's wrapping up next week, thankfully. Then we get Kenobi, presumably next. Then after that, probably Andor. And then very late in the year, back in its usual spot, The Mandalorian, Season 3. I don't think Book of Boba Fett gets picked up for another year. I think Book of Boba Fett kind of, ends after this season. And that's fine, but whatever. I think that that's probably the best way to handle it in a weird way. Because I think that would put The Mandalorian back into its regular slot. And considering The Mandalorian was shooting up until, possibly including now, that makes the most sense to me. And I think Kenobi coming out then is a possibility because it does have the most information out. Maybe I'm mixing up the production time. I think I definitely am mixing up the production timelines. Andor probably is coming when, what's it called? Andor is probably coming when, after that, because it has been shot, but there is, post-production to do still. It's also worth noting that it is entirely plausible that, they just, I swear to God, if this is a fucking train coming in, I'm gonna be pissed. It seems like it is. Yeah, here's the train. So, with that happening, I always love that people do this. I'm at this intersection, I get stuck here at least once a week, as the train's trying to come through. And every time, someone is too impatient to wait for the train, so they will make an illegal right on red and get a red light ticket, to not sit here and wait. It is baffling to me every time it happens. But what was I saying before that? Because the thing is, too, it's like, even if you go down, you're still going to get stuck farther down because the train is going in that direction. Like, the train isn't headed westbound, the train is headed east. So if you make that turn, you're still going to get stuck behind the train. You're not going to beat the thing, whatever. But yeah, I think that that's an interesting way to go about it. I think it'll be cool to see a Kenobi trailer. Based on how Disney Plus tends to do things, if it is coming out in May, I would assume it's taking the Bad Batch's spot of May 4th, which means I would say there's a good chance there's a Super Bowl commercial for it, if it is coming in May. I don't think they're going to wait till March and be like, this is coming here, get ready for it. I think there's a chance they use the Super Bowl, they do a Super Bowl ad, and that's Disney's big Super Bowl ad spend, is that and Multiverse of Madness. Which would make the most sense for me, and that's 2 weeks from now. Because, Book of Boba Fett had a pretty good lead time. I know I'm using March 30th, January 30th-ish for, Moon Knight as kind of the barometer, but they do tend to give a little bit more of a lead, because, I think the Mandalorian trailer dropped in September, and the Mandalorian season 2 started in, November, if I remember correctly, of last year. So that is possible. That is certainly possible. What else was there? So all that's happening. Oh yeah, the last thing isn't really an entertainment. Well, it is an entertainment story, but it's not something we normally cover. It's a sports story. I know we talked about John Madden a month ago at this point, and I don't like to bog down in sports. People tend to tune out when I do that. But this is something that happened yesterday or earlier today. The U.S. women's hockey team played Finland in a qualifier, and I was watching the game while I was at work. Because I can keep my phone running and, Peacock. If you have Peacock, they won't let you forget the Olympics is ongoing, which is kind of cool, but also kind of a weird, it is kind of an annoyance, more than anything else. But either way, I'm watching Peacock, and I'm watching the women's hockey qualifier for Team USA versus Team Finland, and one of the Team USA players gets hurt. And hurt pretty bad, too. Not not like a minor injury. I'm talking a serious injury. Now, for whatever reason, they're not pumping in stadium noise, despite the fact that the stadium is empty. I think pumping in stadium noise would have made this moment a little bit more bearable, because this poor woman who's playing gets her legs tangled up with one of the players from Finland, and ends up seriously injured. And I'm not talking seriously injured where it's one of those things where if you watch football, sometimes there'll be something that appears to be a serious injury and then they walk it off. This was a serious injury to the point that they brought out a stretcher to take her off the ice. And that, they do that thing that you can tell it's bad when all the players are all kneeling, either, on the field if it's football, on the ice if it's hockey. Everyone's kneeling around oh shit, this is bad. That kind of bad injury. And it's also, you can also tell the bad injury based on the number of times they show the replay. A few years back during the NCAA tournament, there was a player who jumped and came down wrong, and he broke his leg, and the bone stuck through the leg, and that clip did not get replayed. This one got replayed once, and you can see her leg bent back in a way that it's not supposed to, but it's one of those things where it's like I didn't play it more. That I didn't sit there. Like if someone gets hurt, and it's not a debilitating injury, they'll sit there like, look at this asshole, and they'll play it over and over again, like a fucking episode of Jackass. But no, they played the replay once, like this is what happened, and it's one of those clinical things. But the thing is, this woman gets hurt, and you knew something was wrong from the second it happened, because this poor woman is on the ice screaming in agony from the injury. And the thing is, there is no stadium noise to kind of mask it. It's just quiet and a cavernous scream. As this woman is in pain on the ice, waiting for medical attention and waiting for an ambulance to come and take her off. Or not an ambulance, but like a stretcher and like a med kit to come and take her off. And I'm just like, you couldn't bump in stadium noise or like, I don't know, cut the commercial or do something like that, because it's uncomfortable to sit there while the woman's screaming in agony on the ice. And just like when last year and the year before, no, it was last year, when they were doing sporting events, I criticized the stadium noise at times because, like, if it's a shot where you can see the stands are empty, you can be like, oh, that's a little weird that we still have this noise. But the way the stadium in Beijing is set up, where they're playing this game, you can't see the stands. You can't see that the stands are empty. So, like, conceivably, there could be people there screaming their heads off and being like, yeah. Or, like, I'm not saying you got to do that as this woman's, hurt on the thing, but just stadium noise. And the thing is, they are doing some, outside stadium noise, because there's no way in hell that they're playing fucking Cult of Personality in a Beijing stadium for hockey. It just doesn't line up. Like, that's something that they would be doing, and it's like, okay, this is normal. Like, that's kind of a problem I have here. It's that, they selectively are playing stadium noise, and it's like you let that moment go, and it's just kind of weird, where it's like, I can't listen to this. Where it's like, and it's not because it's, specifically a woman. It's like, if I was if you're watching an NFL game, and a guy gets knocked so hard, and he breaks his leg, and he's just laying there screaming, it's uncomfortable. Like, these people are at the top of whatever field they're in, whatever sport they're playing, whatever the thing is. It's like, on the Olympics especially, because it's not like this is the best, 36 teams from around the United States, where it's like, okay, we have, the best here. It's like hockey, it's more international, but even that, these aren't the best of the, like when you watch the NHL, these are the best American players and Canadian, and they do bring in from outside places, like the Rangers have Kapakoko, he's from, I want to say, Finland, but like, it's when you have all of that, like, it is, it is the cream of the crop, but this is like the cream of the crop. So, like, yeah, I don't need to see them writhing on the ice. That's one thing, seeing them down, because that's going to happen. I don't need to hear them screaming, because that's just uncomfortable. And I don't think I'm alone in this, and I think the reason why I haven't seen people call out NBC for this is because, number one, NBC's been playing with kid gloves to not call out China for their human rights abuses to begin with. And it's like, oh, this is happening, and this is happening, and they're not being like, hey, so, all of this shit that China does, we're just going to be okay with it. And it's like, yeah, well, it is weird that they're not acknowledging it, because it's like, if it was some other country that was not, the powerhouse on the international geopolitical stage that China is, they'd be like, look what these assholes do. That would be what they're talking about. They wouldn't do that they're not going to do it to China, though. Because, also, NBC is Universal, and Universal is, there's big money to be had if they release Jurassic World Dominion in China, and when they release the new Fast and the Furious movie in China, there's money to be had there. So they're not going to treat them poorly, because then China's going to be like, alright, fuck you then, you can't release your movie here. And that's a problem. And China can do without American movies, but American movies need China for profit, to be able to make as much money as they do. Which is getting lesser and lesser. I mean, if you look at, like, the the movies that Marvel put out last year, I think Spider-Man was the only one that came out in China. But, you know, Black Widow didn't come out in China, and Shang-Chi didn't come out in China, and Eternals didn't come out in China. And while Eternals may have had the second lowest of all time for Marvel Studios, the second lowest box office over its theatrical run, it's not a terrible number that it did. And Shang-Chi did pretty well for itself, all things considered. And I feel like, you know, look at the other box office numbers from the other places, it's like, it's starting to move away from that, but that money still spends when it comes in. That money is still something that they can bring their shareholders, and they're not going to be like, hey, let's, you know, treat China the way we would treat another country, because we don't want to lose that, you know, what the fuck is this guy doing? Oh, okay, that guy was going fast enough for him. But we don't want to lose that money, so it is kind of a weird situation to be in, where it's like, don't criticize China. And I'm not saying it's specific, it's just, in this example right now, it is, what's it called? It is that. I mean, Disney has had their run-ins, Warner Bros. Has had their run-ins. I mean, you know, fuck Disney, at least Disney didn't, like, you know, they hired Chloe Zhao and Simu Liu, knowing their stances about China. So at least they're willing to hire people who are anti-China to work on their movies and star in their movies. I mean, you know, vocally so. So, you know, that's a risk they're willing to take. That's why those movies didn't come out there. It's because of Simu Liu's comments, and because of because of Chloe Zhao's comments, that those movies didn't come out in China. So it's you know, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I understand why those movies didn't come out there based on the society that China is, but come on, like, you know, you gotta, if Disney's willing to lose that money, like, if Disney's willing to do that with, you know, with Eternals and with Shang-Chi, which, Shang-Chi, it's like, if there's a movie that was designed to appeal to the Chinese marketplace, it's Shang-Chi, and they were like, nah, we'll skip it. I mean, it's that kind of thing, where it's like, you know, that's where we are, that's where we are. But, you know, I forgot even how we got onto this topic with NBC, with, you know, the Olympics. Oh, well, we were talking about I don't know how we bridged, well, that's the thing, it's like, that's been the headline, is that NBC's been treating them with kid gloves, like, and that's wrong, but that's been the headline, about this. Also, it's incredibly sexist, but women's sports tend to get less coverage than men's sports. And you can guarantee that was in a qualifier between the U.S. men's hockey team and the Finnish men's hockey team, and they had him laying there on the ice and he was screaming his head off in pain. That would have been a story, I feel like, because it's like, just pump in stadium noise. Like, it's a pretty easy solution, like, pump in stadium noise, and that would solve that problem. I mean, my other big problem with the Olympics is the fucking Russians being able to compete. Like, they were banned for, like, I want to say a decade from competing, but it's okay. The Russians can still compete under the name the Russian Olympic Committee or something like that. Like, oh, well, okay then. Like, that's okay. Like, they were found guilty of doping, so they were like, you know, you're banned, but the athletes can still compete as the Russian Olympic, you know, representation or whatever the fuck. ROC, I think, is what they go as, and it's like, well, how is that any different from just being the Russian Federation? It's no different. Like, it's ridiculous what it is, where it's like, hey, you know, you can still compete under this. I mean, granted, I understand that, like, you know, people who were, you know, and that was one of the things they kept pointing out was like, like, there are like 8 players on the women's hockey team who were born after the year 2000, and it's one of those things that you hear and you're like, oh, that's weird, and then you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, 2000 was 22 years ago, so yeah, that tracks. It'd be like 19, 20 years old. But it's like, I just, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not fair to penalize people who were born that late, and had nothing to do with it, but come the fuck on. Like, you know, you can't, there's no punishment then if it's like the Russian, if the Russians can still just, compete under the same thing. But yeah, we did considerably more sports talk than entertainment talk today, but sports is entertainment, especially considering that we went into Super Bowl ad placement, which is, a sporting event in the United States. If you're an American and everyone knows what Super Bowl is. Whatever. We will wrap up there for today. It is Friday night. Should anything major happen between now and then, we will address it. Probably not tomorrow morning, because it is unlikely that another story will drop this late in the day, because it is 5:30 Eastern Time. So most people have gone home for the day. And it is unlikely that we're going to get something new tonight. But if something else happens, we'll talk about it tomorrow morning. We're going to do a Naomi catch-up. We're going to do, over on Beware of Spoilers, we're going to do a bit on a review of Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America tomorrow. Also on Beware of Spoilers. And I feel like there was one other thing that needed to happen that's coming up. And if any other news comes up, we'll talk about that. But until then, have a great rest of your day. Pokemon Legends Arceus. I will have a review of that late next week, because that is taking considerably longer than I thought it would to play. But until then, have a great rest of your week.